There we go. So welcome. You might have thought that you were attending the lab for June and the theme of compassion, but no, we've done a switcheroo on you because of how important this is to us. The switcheroo is that we're now calling this Welcome, Riding the Waves Together. I'm going to change to this. Riding the Waves Together, a COVID-19 confab on what's coming and what's needed. And just by way of introduction, this isn't a, oh my gosh, everything's horrible, let's brainstorm. This is truly sharing with you why Scott and I are approaching this next year with confidence and joy. As this last 3 weeks, we've been talking about what can Soul Matters do to respond to the fact that many of us are going to be doing this in the long term, right? It's not just 3 weeks, we hold our breath and then we go back to gathering. It's that we are looking at maybe as long as a year, aren't we? And so what can Soul Matters do? And we're going to do some pretty intense talking and then say, what do you think? And then intense presentation and tell you what we've been thinking about and then say, what do you think? So I'll switch now so Scott can tell us some things, and I will do the weight room. Scott?
Okay, hey, thanks. It's so great to see everybody, by the way. So just to kind of set us up, as Katie said, a few things just to kind of get us all on the same page. First of all, we found it helpful. Well, let me just start with saying, you are not being, even though it looks like it, you are not being invited into a conversation right now. You are being invited into the middle of a conversation. So Katie and I, and actually have been dialoguing with a whole bunch of DREs from UU and otherwise, and actually some of you already. So what I mean by in the middle of the conversation is partly what Katie and I will be presenting today is not our expertise or our wisdom, but basically here's what we've been hearing. What do you think about it? What feels on and what's off? So in a way, you are not, this is not a feedback group where you're just giving us feedback. This is really where you're our thought partners, where you are helping us process what we've been hearing. So that's what I mean by the middle of the conversation. Does that make sense? So it's not just, hey, what are your ideas? But we're going to give you some stuff, and then you're going to say, ooh, that's, I don't care if you've heard that from 100 people, Scott and Katie, that's off the mark entirely. And we're doing that because obviously we're taking a deep breath before we start working on curriculum, which we keep saying is still 3 weeks. You know, the Soul Matters team is to be creating stuff for September, 3 weeks away. And then we all of a sudden say, wait a minute, 3 weeks away. Oh my God. So that's why we need a little help now. The other thing I would say, Katie already mentioned. So think of yourself as, in my household, we say triple checkers, not double checkers. So you're triple checking what we've heard, right? The other piece is that you are triple checking opportunities and changing landscapes. So Katie already mentioned this, right? So we will talk about some hard stuff today, but Katie and I do not think we're putting on rose-colored glasses when we say what we're triple checking is opportunities and changing landscapes, not RE collapse and the loss of all our employment. Now, you may challenge us on that and say, what are you guys, are you crazy? This is terrible. We should be talking about RE collapse and job threat. But Katie and I, from our listening so far, feel like we're not there, right? We're really about, this is about opportunities and changing landscapes. And so now, just to blab a little bit more, we want to just lift up the two metaphors that Katie and I have been finding inspiring. We won't stay in metaphor land very long, but we do believe metaphors help ground us. So Katie, why don't you share in that spirit of opportunities and changing landscapes, share your metaphor and then I'll share mine.
Yeah, because we couldn't decide. And so we finally were like, let's do both of them. One might work for you, the other one might not. So for me, it's the riding the waves, the surfboard metaphor. I picture all of us standing in water up to our necks for the last 2 months when things changed so fast. And we thought it was going to be over and someone was going to be waiting on the beach with a warm towel in like June or July, maybe August. And we're like turning around to look for that warm towel and it's not there. And in fact, what the lifeguard is saying is that not only that, but you need to learn to surf right now because there's a big wave, maybe even multiple big waves coming, and it's going to last for a year. And so that whole surfboard thing came to me because I had the opportunity of being the religious professional at the UU Church in Honolulu for a month. They had an interim program. And I got to watch how you learn how to surf. And it's not hard. And there is the danger of dumping and just getting rolled by a wave. But I am confident that we can ride these waves that are coming. And that's my metaphor. We're going to ride the waves. We're going to tighten our grip on that surfboard. And yeah, we might fall a little bit, but we're going to be able to stand up and really use that energy to propel religious education ministry into the 21st century, right? Kicking or screaming, but we're going to be doing it whether we want to or not.
Okay, well, real quick. First of all, I just think Katie's metaphor is better than mine, so I'm a little bummed. But I do like the idea of the wave, just because what we know about waves, right? I'll just sort of repeat why I love Katie's, is that it takes seriously our fear, right? I mean, let's not fool ourselves. If we aren't prepared, a wave has the ability to take us under, right? So it honors that. The other piece, though, is that what we know is that people who turn that wave from a threat to energy are the ones that go in with a surfboard. So we got to figure out what we're taking. We got to take the right things with us. And what we also know is you don't wait for the wave to hit. There's about 2 minutes of yours paddling like crazy before the wave hits you. So those two metaphors help me. For me, it's the metaphor. The other metaphor besides me loving Katie's was shifting winds. What we're really looking at is, to use an environmental word, shifting winds. And what we know about is changing winds change the soil we're on and require different kinds of structures. So that's why today is really about us identifying the changing winds and then figuring out what new structures we have to build to withstand those. So that's why the rest of our discussion, Katie and I found it helpful to think about the 20,000 foot perspective, 10,000 foot perspective, and 5,000 foot perspective. 20,000 is what we'll call the shifts, right? The changing winds, very high level changing winds, and we want to verify that with you. 10,000 foot is the structures we're thinking about that you have to build to withstand those new winds. 5,000 foot is the details, which we probably won't focus on as much today. So we're going to talk briefly about the shifting winds, but then the structures are what we're going to spend most of our time, that 10,000 foot level. So let us stop. Is that good enough? Does that make sense about where we're coming at this? A few thumbs up. I'm a preacher. I need, okay, good. You don't have to smile, but at least thumbs up. That's good.
Or not.
Okay, so we don't spend too much time. I'm going to pepper you with some super general high-level shifts that we've been hearing people. I'm going to list about 7 or 8 of them. We could list 20, but just to prime the pump, I'm going to list the high-level shifts that Katie and I have been hearing from other DREs, from stuff we've been reading, mostly from UCC material, a little bit from evangelical circles, but mostly from progressive liberal religious denominations as well. And then write these down, and then we're going to open it up for you all to say what other high level stuff, and then we'll apply it to the structural changes Katie and I are seeing. So the first one has to do with what we would call leadership location, or the source of a religious leader's. And I'll apologize if I'll slip into DRE. I know not everybody's a DRE. You have different titles and different, but let me see. I want to apologize in advance if I don't use language that fits the diversity of titles we all have. But so the first shift is around leader location, meaning the DRE leader location or the source of your relationality. In general, we're hearing people say the shift is from in between time and backstage to front stage. What is meant about that? It means during non-COVID time, we have taken for granted how our relationship with DREs to the kids and families has really been located in the in-between time, in those moments when we say hello, when we greet, when we're coaching, and that type of relationality, which has been so important, COVID time is somewhat depleted. And so that why to sustain relationality when that in-between time, when you're backstage support and coaching, when those opportunities go down, the need for you to continue the precious relationship you have with your families, because you're the lifeline to the church, really. You know, I mean, DREs, you're not just propping up a program. You are the lifeline. You are the embodiment of relationality between families and kids in our church. The front stage, the location switches to more front stage work. We'll talk later. You can see there's a lot of implications of that, right? We all have different skills. So when we're moving on front stage, some of us have been, A+ backstage producers or directors, and we're not as comfortable in the front stage light. Others of us, it's different. So there's an implication there. The other shift we've heard is from recruiter and coach to not even player coach, but much more player and, more important, teacher. Now, what's behind that, or what we've heard, are conversations about, in the past, and some of these comments are for folks who mid-sized programs or larger, saying, when I had to segmentize my kids into 5 different age groups, of course my role as recruiter, volunteer recruiter, and coach was so high. But in this time, it's not clear that, number one, again, this isn't just about our jobs, right? Our relationality has to be super high. And so there's a way in which part of the reason we move from behind the scenes coach and recruiter to teacher is it now becomes important for us to become teachers of classes, not just recruiters of people who then lead the classes. We'll have another conversation about online, but and again, this is just what we're hearing, that DREs are seeing themselves as, we need to limit, instead of 5 classes that we're trying to prop up, move it more down to 2 or 3. And of those 2, we need to actually be the teacher for one and recruit maybe one other person. So there's a lot tangled up when I say this move from recruiter and coach to teacher. There's a lot tied up in that from what we're hearing. Not saying this is right or wrong, but that's just a shift that we want to get some check with you all. Then the other shift I'll talk about with DREs is from leading, and this is mostly when we've talked to people about the role that you have in Children's Chapel, but from leading to lead with. So from lead to lead with. Now what's behind this is the first wave of discussions we noticed about a month and a half ago. There was a lot of talk of DREs need to become Mr. Rogers. We need to be the ones are sitting on the stoop. We need to up our visibility. We need to in order to be in relationship, we need to be there on the stoop. But then after 2 months of discussion, what Katie and I picked up is a few challenges to that theory of that shift. So from director behind the scenes to being Mr. Rogers, the center stage. A couple challenges have been, number one, well, not all of us can be Mr. Rogers, right? And the assumption is that we need to compete on the level of quality, right? Like our production value has to go up. Our storytelling, our leading children's chapter has to go up and be at the level of Mr. Rogers. As we all know, that Mr. Rogers looked homey, but there was high production value with that was no that was no thrown together at the last minute production, right? But the challenges are, well, not all of us can be Mr. Rogers. And then here's the most interesting one Katie and I have heard about that. It's that the other thing is, let's be a little humble. Not only can we not be Mr. Rogers, but nobody wants us to be Mr. Rogers. Like it worked sort of during 2 months of the early stage Corona where people wanted to see us, but are they going to tune in for a whole year? Are we enough of a carrot to be center stage, right? I'll use my own self. I'd like to believe I'm George Clooney. I'm not George Clooney, right? We can't get there. So what is the carrot, right? What will make somebody come week after week to watch, whatever it is, Children's Chapel, whatever? It's that instead of you leading, have humility and lead with a family. So relations are more of a carrot and a lure than your charisma. That's the warning there. Don't think that we all can have a lot of charisma and that'll get people to come watch our stuff. So from the shift, and I'm sorry I'm being wordy, but we're still trying to figure this out. So I'm trying to put words to something we're still trying to figure out. But from lead to lead with, what's behind that is the carrot is really family. So instead of you trying to be Mr. Rogers and do it all, every week, imagine having a guest family do your Children's Chapel with you. So if you say, hey, come join me on Sunday for Children's Chapel, come join me, Scott, for Children's Chapel, that's going to wear off in about 2 or 3 months. But if instead it shifts to, come join me and the Smiths leading worship this Sunday, and I know you're going to have a family in person, and it's going to be the people I know, whether I'm deep friends with them or not. Even just for human psychological voyeuristic, I want to see that's just more interesting to me, and it's connective. And the carrot is to draw me to those families. So I'll be quiet there, but there's a lot behind that lead to lead with. Let me see. I think there's just 2 more. Oh, these are quick. Just the obvious one. I think that now home life material has moved from an add-on to an essential. So having curriculum or home life faith formation is no longer an add-on, but an essential. The other big assumption has been, there is some word out there that we need to just drop the whole online classroom model, or as Katie and I like to say, family circles. There's a lot of stuff out there to say abandon it and focus on Children's Chapel and home life and other activities. From listening to folks, Katie and I don't think we're doubting that is true. We think there is still a role, and again, we like to call them kids circles or friendship circles, not RE classrooms, but we think that they've not been made irrelevant, mostly because friendships matter. Friendships are built in interaction. And no offense, but Children's Chapel alone is much more leader to audience relationship, not kid to kid relationship. And so Children's Chapel can only get so far with that interaction to build friendship. And home life material and work is more about family to kid, family member to family, or not kid to kid. So that space may change, but to think we need to eliminate that space is a mistake because of the importance of those relationships. And then, I think that's it. I think I'm going to stop there because there's some other lower level shifts. Those are the high ones. So Katie, did I miss anything? And I know there's some other shifts that were more low level, but I think the general ones were those.
Those were the shifts that I remember too. That's great. I need to do a little process check. I'm trying to do a speaker record, and when I speak, I don't see myself. Is that good?
No, I believe, Katie, everybody can control the way they see their own screen right now, but you're controlling what the recording will be.
Yeah, which is, I would like, oh well, it doesn't matter. I'll just speak with the gallery view because it's so nice to see everyone anyway. Hey there. So you see what I work with? You see how Scott's the team lead and he just takes it to this another level. Have you any questions about what we just said of this big shifts that we have identified? And you'll visually raise your hand. I can see most of you. If you just like 2 or 3 comments here.
Well, and yeah, questions, comments, and gaps.
Yeah.
You know, what big things have we missed? And challenge. Feel free to challenge, because this isn't Katie and I being that, you know what I mean? Like, we're just saying what we've heard.
And feel free to put them in the chat. And Scott, if you'll pay attention to the chat, that would be great too.
I'll start doing that.
All right, no hands yet. So I think, let me just check the second page. My goodness, this is wonderful. No hands yet, good.
I'll jump in.
Oh yes, please do.
Yeah, I really like the piece about don't have to be super high quality and charismatic, but just build relationship, especially between the kids. That's really helpful. We've been experimenting with coming of age online, and I had all sorts of getting to know you questions for them, and then I just said, or you could ask each other questions, and that's all I want to do. Lots of them getting to know each other. So, and I want to try asking a family to co-lead. Sounds really good. Yeah, there are fewer spontaneous moments with kids, the backstage moments,
Yes.
but we're doing a games night every week, which is really helpful for informal connection. And we're doing a breathing ritual every week, which takes 30 seconds, but we stay on the call for an hour. I found those to be helpful.
That's nice. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Hey, Katie.
Hey.
Hey, I'm Beth Klein from Emerson UU Congregation in Marietta, Georgia. And one thing I've been talking a lot with the teachers, RE teachers, and one of the things I'm hearing over and over is what brings them joy in teaching is the actual relationship with the kids, connecting with them, being there in person. And several of mine have said they're just miserable doing this Zoom.
Yes.
So that to recognize that and give them a break over the summer, rotate those new faces in. We have a summer program that's focused on share your passions, but it was all built months ago on activity things, and they aren't translating well to Zoom. So we're doing the same thing as we just mentioned, game nights, the relationship building. I'm fine if they want to spend an hour with check-in and how's it going, what's new, and we linked it into the topics of the month. But that sense of helping those teachers feel engaged and get the kind of joy they do in person from kids is a real challenge.
It is, isn't it? Thank you for bringing that up. I'm glad you said that. And
Thanks.
I see in the chat pre-K to second grade is not working. I'll share with you, my kindergarten granddaughter has now refused to do school on her Chromebook. She has just refused. It's just
Katie,
too hard.
I was just saying, I'm parsing the chat, so whenever I take a few more comments, and I'll reiterate, because there's some common lines. So I'm capturing those right now, so you don't.
Wonderful, wonderful. One or two last comments. Thank you for those. I'm sure lots of things are going through your head right now. And Scott, did you want to parse?
So I would just lift up, there's some great gaps that I think as we move now into remember how we're moving from, 20,000 foot, let's talk about the wins, 10,000 foot, let's talk about the new structures that we have to resource for and build. So we're moving from that. So a lot of these comments really spoke more to the 10,000 foot level of more specificity, but so a couple great gaps that we should keep in mind in this conversation is, let's not forget kids and families who don't have access to technology.
Mm-hmm.
There's a shift there that in terms of the access to the program is no longer the front door, but requires technology. That changes something, right? This isn't a shift as much as a shift caused by a question. So that it's that, how do we shift from being stuck in Sunday to beyond Sunday. So let's not be stuck by assumptions of doing everything on Sunday. If we are serious about our structures taking relationality seriously, right? What about newcomers? Because newcomers who don't have that relation, notice what I just said about, hey, how come? Because I know the Smiths are leading alongside the deer. Well, if you don't know the Smiths, that's not as big of a carrot, maybe. But we'll talk about that, because maybe not, right? Just seeing another family reflected might be a carrot. So, but newcomers are a special thing to keep in mind. Younger kid, the other piece is younger kids not engaging technology as easily as some of the older kids. Some folks here said that's not quite working out as well. Yeah. Again, these aren't all problems, right? They're another reason why maybe we have to have numerous environments, right? Not just an online children's chapel or whatever. So, and then the last thing is a bunch of folks are asking for specific ideas, like game night ideas. Remember that 20,000, 10,000, 5,000? Asking for game night ideas is great, but that's a 5,000 foot or a 500 foot question. Meaning the Katie, probably, I'll try to dump that on her.
Yes, it is.
But Katie, we will pull together probably another Zoom call where we can do that 500 foot detailed sharing. Today's more about structural changes, if that, right? Katie, is that what we want to focus?
Yeah, and I'd also say that's exactly what's going to be in the packets, right? That's our aggregate for you. We find the best game nights, but both and, yes, definitely.
So I think that's it, Katie. If you want to move on to our, what we, having digested these wins that we've been hearing, Katie and I now want to present what would be a blueprint, a tentative, very tentative, written only in pencil blueprint about what we're calling the structures. You could also call the family ministry environments that we're thinking Soul Matters needs to try to create material to support.
Yep,
so Katie.
I'm so excited. So do you know what? I mean, I'm just like you. I wake up some days and I'm just trying to get through the day some days. This morning, after Scott and I have put these weeks together leading up to this confab, I finally got a sense of confidence, and I was walking around and I call it joy because I'm excited. I think we're putting our finger on some things that can help everybody. I did a presentation at Star Island last summer about 21st century faith formation. From it, we're like struggling. And yet what I realize is everything we're talking about is what I was saying someday we'll have to implement. The pain is that, dang, we have to implement it right now and we're not sure what we're doing, but we're going to be riding that wave. So that's enough. So if I was really pro, I would have a slide with 4 things on it, but I don't. So you're going to have to write this down, okay? Here's our 4 structures that we are talking about. The first is how to create those children's chapels. Parentheses, how to create carrot worship. That metaphor of what's the carrot that's going to keep your families wanting to come in and do that. So our chapels, and we're going to talk about children's chapels. That's one of the structures that has become suddenly much more important in your lives and all of our lives. The next one.
Oh, Katie, just remember, I think we wanted to pair the relationality that went with each of these environments.
I can do that.
It's simplistic, but it'll help everybody.
So your chapel is the leader to your children, leader to family pairing. If you're familiar with early childhood, it'd be like Montessori, right? The children, interaction with children and the leader, that's the most important thing about chapel. The next thing is something we're adding on, and that is what we're tentatively calling, we haven't got a good name for it, but it's that whole idea of adventure. You might call it outings and mission. It might be like the big game nights. This is the family to family interaction. That's a component that we want to provide now. Outings and mission, family to family, and I'll put in parentheses, let's add a little interfaith talk about that. What could you do as an adventure, maybe using crossing paths? Ooh, but I'm not going to go into that because that's sort of 5,000-foot level. But if we have time, I want to hit that up at the end of this. Okay, that's 2. The third is small groups for children. You could call it your RE class, but I don't recommend it. That sounds like super boring. However, what if we called it a friendship circle? If I was 8, I might come to a friendship circle as long as it wasn't too Girl Scout, Boy Scouty. But anyway, whatever we're going to call it, it's a children's small group. And that is the child-to-child interaction that we want to help with the relationships. The fourth and last of these 4 structures that we are looking at addressing is the home life. You may know that we released the whole Creating Sabbath Spaces 5-program thing. So suddenly our homes can look like a Jewish home where the home meal is so important. It might look like a Hindu home where the chalice, there's the chalice that was on the cover of that, becomes the center of some family spiritual life. I'm real excited about that because, I mean, as a DRE for 35 years, I always dropped that home piece, and yet now it's one of the most essential things that we can provide for our people. So there's the 4 biggies. So let's tease out each of the 4, and Scott, please jump in and watch the chat for me, and we'll see about what we're gonna do. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love just to, I know we're pressed for time here, but I'd love just to have 5 minutes where people react, because all that sounds pretty tame, right? But I want to, let me pull out what makes Katie think that where we're seeing the edge of that. So it wouldn't surprise you if we got on the call and said, you have to do 3 dance steps, you know, children's chapel, classroom / small group, and home life, right? But what really has struck us is the importance of, we don't even have a name for that fourth environment, but it's the outings, it's outside, it's beyond. That is becoming more and more important. So that is an edge in a way. And then the other thing that was helpful is when we heard people talk about the different relationality within each bucket.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, that being very conscious that Children's Chapel really is just about individual to kid, classroom is kid to kid, home is family member to family member. And what this 4th new environment is about family to family. And the reason why we harp on that is, one of Katie and I's guesses is that this Carrot Talk, it's really a program that is somehow consciously or unconsciously connecting families with families, either by interactions or visibility, is going to be more attractive and compelling than one that just focuses on the other 3 kinds of relationships. That's an assumption, but I just want to pull that out. That's what we're wrestling with, if that makes sense. That's all I would add, Katie.
Great. So want to check the chat, and I saw Stephen had his hand up. You want to say some stuff, Stephen?
You answered my question on number 4. What was the relationship? That was family to family, but so was adventuring. It was family to family. All the things that I've been hearing from my congregation, it's building that family to family relationship seems to be paramount rather than kid to kid or DRE to kid.
Great, thank you. Good clarification. So let me just go into Children's Chapel. And here's one of the things I learned when I offered that old program called Spirit Jam, which Jessica is still doing there at Boulder Valley. Thank you. The idea of that was a children's chapel and then activities for everyone, essentially, with paid teachers. Children's Chapel is a time just for the children, obviously. And some of you are saying, well, we're doing entire family worship. And I think that's great too. It's a nice outcome from COVID, isn't it? That we have family worship now. However, the one example I can bring to you is, and maybe help describe, is when we're dealing with death, for instance. So we used to have a service of remembrance, and people brought pictures of the families that they loved and had lost. When we had a children's chapel before that was separate, I could explain and talk to the children about what death is. We used puppets and prepare them for going into the adult service where people were crying, so that they don't just see the grief that exists, but they have a little preparation. So maybe that will help you understand why I feel like there is a place for a special children's chapel, not always big multi-gen ministry. So in these children's chapels, this was the carrot that Scott talked about. You and the Smiths are doing this chapel together. You become the lead, you move from the leader of the children's chapel. So, I mean, everyone would get sick of me being the little talking head for children's chapel, right? Yeah, maybe October, but by November they'd be like, yeah, I don't care. Katie has one message, she said it 14 times, I don't need anything else. However, what if you are the leader with? So not only do you invite the Smiths, maybe you have a leader with a team. Ooh. Maybe you have a leader with a community member. So your children's chapel becomes you are leading with as the DRE. That's not going to happen if you're not the DRE anymore, by the way. It goes from being a siloed thing. So children's chapel is like, okay, now we're doing children's chapel, to being sort of the center point that you approach into the program, because the small group children's meetings come off of that children's chapel. That's the, you know, the Fowler's piece, the integrative piece is the small group friendship circle that you're doing with the kids. It's not, okay, children's chapel, I'm gonna, you know, talk to an audience and that's it. But now the children can integrate it and respond to it and talk back and forth. The other thing that Scott and I talk about is, okay, we have a variety of DREs. Some of us are very comfortable being front and center. Me, I was like, can I do 4L ages? Please, please, please. I love doing that kind of storytelling. I'm also a puppeteer. I love doing puppets in front of 200 people. Some of us aren't that way. And so you yourself discern what your interests and passions are. And you say to yourself, okay, Soul Matters is providing these ideas for children's chapels. Am I going to do it, or am I going to be the midwife or person who enables that to happen? So there's a little bit about children's chapel, the leader to children family piece. Shall I move on, or do you want to have comments?
Well, I would just, oh, go ahead.
Jessica.
I would just lift up, just put an edge on that, the three things Katie named, what we think we're hearing is children's chapel will, using the wave metaphor, children's chapel will become irrelevant and no one will come unless those three things. Unless children's chapel moves from a siloed experience to one that's integrated, sets up, and is connected to your small group meeting, your family life, and your outings. So if children's chapel is just one on the menu, but isn't integrated. So the shift is from a siloed experience to an integrated experience, right? So if it doesn't do that, that'll give it energy. That's one of the things that will, if we don't do it, it'll collapse. The other one is the lead versus lead with. If you try to do it alone as the leader, if you try to be Mr. Rogers, it'll collapse. But if you lead with, there'll be more of an energy there. And then the third one, though, was flexibility of online design. And this speaks to where we're struggling with Soul Matters. So it's not just feedback about these shifts, but we want your ideas, because some people have said, will you just give us someone else's high produced children's chapel and we can play it? Some people have said that. Other people have said, and we're like, oh my God, that means we have to radically change what Soul Matters is doing and recruit. Oh my God, if that's true. Curtain number 2, people have said, no, I'm Mr. Rogers, I'm fine. Just give me the script and I will embody it all. I'll be the star of the show. But then other people said, what the heck? No, that scares me. So then option 3 has been, I'm fine with being the ringmaster. I just don't want to be the center act. So give me material to do everything around the stuff. But when it comes to the story, there I would take a more high production value video where I could be Mr. Rogers. Remember Mr. Rogers was at a TV or a curtain when he pulled it open and the TV took us into a video? Do folks remember what I'm talking about? So other people have said, I'll be Mr. Rogers, but for the high production, for the story time or something, I'm not a great storyteller. So let me pull open that curtain. And that's when you can give me in our packets videos for me to play that. So, but you can see why we need feedback, because those are 3 different resources. I mean, depending on which of those 3 things you all are saying you need, those are 3 different kinds of resources we have to develop. So I'll shut up there. But so we're not just looking for, is this right? But I mean, we have to decide, I mean, should Katie and I be manic or not?
We have a hand up, Scott, with Sarah.
Yes.
I just wanted to speak to Children's Chapel, and as an interim, one of the goals that I was asked was to do better at connecting membership with children as a whole. So one of the things I did was bring more multi-gen worship, what we call all community. So the kids are not separated in Children's Chapel, and what I'm needing are more resources to do really excellent worship multi-generationally. And when the whole family is present in their home for worship, that is an awesome thing. And I'd like to take more advantage of that.
Thank you, Sarah. That's great.
Sarah, can I put you on the spot though? Because we're getting mixed messages about that. We're
Sure.
also hearing from folks. We're hearing, and actually more, so I'm not I mean, who knows, right? It's hard to know, but the dominant voice that we're hearing now from folks is that our intergen services are dropping off at a higher rate than just family-centered children's chapels.
That's not been my experience. I mean, we've also added things, fun things in, like Where's Waldo into our screens, and various things to keep the kids' attention. The homily is no more than 10 minutes. When I do it next week, it's going to be two 5-minute parts. There's a lot more music. The children's story is woven into the worship. I mean, for me, it's something that I've had to focus on as an interim, because that's what my people want. They do not want children in one space and adults in another. They think it's really important for us to build community intergenerationally. And so worship is a key part of that.
Great.
Fascinating. That's just.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we're going to hold that for a second, and we're going to do a little tease out of the outline of the outings and the missions of those 4 pieces, the 4 structures.
Oh, I'm sorry, Katie, but don't we need some feedback about, do people want a full children's chapel video that they plunk in? Those 3 current, we need a little feedback for those 3 avenues. What would be helpful to you with a packet when you're doing children's chapel? You see what I'm saying? Like, we're thinking we wouldn't waste our time trying to collect from you. Like, there's some of us who are doing just the whole children's chapel. It could be like a video show that other smaller churches could just play. We're assuming that that's because the importance of having the DRE's relationality high, you don't want to supplant relationality with that. So we're assuming we shouldn't spend energy trying to collect and find full services, but that middle ground where some of you might be doing high production, just the story, where we could do a targeted thing and give you, some of you would use like a small story from somebody else, but not a whole service. I think we're just wondering, is that accurate, or are we on or off there?
That would be a good thing for the chat, if we're accurate or if we're on or off.
That'd be great. Yeah.
That would be great.
Feedback about that, so we know.
Because we are seeing some things, okay, because that's why we're on this call. That's why we're riding the wave. Yeah, good. Put those in and Scott can read them. And I'm going to go into the second of the 4 structures, which is the outings and missions, the family-to-family adventures. So what we're thinking of with family-to-family adventures, and some of you have mentioned a few of the ideas, is that this is a time when families share their gifts. And like Scott said, our human psychology means we like to be the voyeurs. We like to, maybe we don't want to always talk to them, but we like to see Karen, who is the yoga teacher, go and teach us all some yoga moves with her family. We like to see the bridge engineer build a block Keystone Bridge out of graham crackers and let everyone do that. We like to have, let's see, a music show and tell. I've heard it called musical instrument petting zoo, where everyone plays their instrument. I was just on the Berks County service last Sunday, since they did a Crossing Paths service, and they invited me to come as the Crossing Paths author. And they were doing beautiful music, the way these high schoolers who are in orchestra can do. Wouldn't it be lovely to have that? Or an art show night, or a game night. Those are the outings and missions. And then Scott, I wanted you to talk about the mission thing, that the idea that you had about that, if you can.
Yeah, so in just this family to family work, it's so hard, friends, because it's just, you know, these are it's more like we all this feedback we got, smelling something, not really seeing it, so it's hard to put stuff in words right now. But let me first make my own, the way I understand the distinction when we say outings and missions. So outings, so what we're saying is that it seems, when we think about the shifts, one of the implications is that your role, right, needs to be, when it comes to family, not on Sunday, not on Wednesday, but these, almost like you're cultivating, recruiting, designing, producing these adventures, which would be these things like Katie said. Like, imagine once a month, there's a monthly adventure, right? Or monthly, let's do something big together, outing that's not an outing. And that's why, and remember, going back, this idea that the carrot, instead of being cultivators of relationships, this is the big shift that helped me. Whereas before, DRAs have seen themselves as cultivating relationships between people. Now you think about, how can I tap into relationships as the carrot that will attract people to things? And when you get in that mindset, that means if families themselves are the carrot, then having an event where this month we're all gathering online to lead yoga. If you have hey, on Saturday, all families join me as the DRE and I'll lead yoga, that will not be as attractive as if you identify a family in your church who does yoga together or is a yoga instructor, saying this month's outing or adventure is all church family yoga led by the Joneses. Or karaoke night. This month's adventure is musical. It's not karaoke. It's what were those things back when I was in small towns? You'd have this show where people would go up and somebody would read a poem, somebody would do a song. They weren't musicals, but they were, everybody it was an adult show.
Like, yeah, they were like coffee houses.
Coffee house things,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But to have a
Talent show.
Yeah, where you recruit 5 of your families. If you say this month's adventure is we're going to share music, 5 of your families to do music who are really well, and then you open it up for karaoke. Again, that's understanding that the family is the relationship is the carrot, or that family art show, same thing. But that's being a monthly adventure. That's a different thing of you being a different kind of recruiter. So that's one thing. You start engaging your families and recruiting them to be the star of the show. So that's adventures, a monthly adventure, and we would actually throw out in our packets. We would try to come up with 1 or 2 adventure ideas or outings. We don't have a good name for this, for every month in our packets. If you think this idea is good, right? The other thing I would say is, and Katie is always reminding me that we want to not use the word secret, but I'm going to use it right now because as a kid, I loved the idea of secret agents. And I can't remember what book it was, but one of my favorite books was this family of, parents and kids who are a family secret agent team. Like, I loved that book when I was in like 3rd or 4th grade. So the other idea we thought about is, again, this is from lead to lead with. What if then every month you told families there is going to be, call it what you want, grace teams or special agent family teams that you are going to be the midwife of, that include such things. It's secret stuff, right? So you will recruit some families to become a grace unit where at 5 a.m. you're going to recruit 2 families. You're going to warn all the families in advance. You're going to be recruited to do missions with me every month, different families each month. And the 1 month you identify the couple in your church who's an older couple who's been sick. They love their garden, but they haven't had a chance to weed it. You work with your minister and your pastoral folks, you identify that need. And then part of your RE program becomes mobilizing the secret grace unit. And you get up at 5 a.m. with those 2 families. Social distancing still is in place. You sneak over to that family and weed the garden for them. You organize these units, right? We could talk, or the next month you find the family who has a birthday. You mobilize 5 families to drive and do the singing thing. Mm-hmm. But that becomes something. That's not part of our normal RE programs, these secret units, but it's something to keep the community together, and it's engaging families with families in a different way. It's just one of the thoughts. So those 2 things, monthly adventures, and then ideas in the packets for secret mission or mystery mission, things you could do around the theme.
Scott, outdoor movie nights. Yeah, drive-in movies, that kind of stuff. All right, I'm aware of a little timing thing, so I'm going to keep us moving. So the next is, I want to talk about the home life piece just for a bit. It's not a major piece. This is the family member to family member interaction. So our family guide called Soulful Home now becomes an essential part of a religious education program. The Chalice Home activity, where we built the altar in their home, could be a monthly development where each month you say to your people, well, this month let's build something for the animals in your life and put it on the Chalice Home. And the third part, so we have Soulful Home, we have Chalice Home. The third part then becomes a parent group facilitated by the DRE on how the families are processing what they did in Soulful Home and Chalice Home. So that's another way to use your skills as DRE, since you're not having to recruit teachers. The 4th piece of that is the small groups for children, which you think of it, it's the RE class, it's the connection to the chapel, it's the friendship circle. And some of you, and our research has been, as we talk to people, the children right now are very tired of the online Zooms. Some of them are working, but some of them are just diving. They've been trying to struggle through Zoom online school. And the other thing that comes up is the actual snail mail of connections for them. So the activity box idea, the snail mail connection to a family, so it's not all Zoom. Well, I also want to reflect with you that we are in the time of year that normally the families and the staff are exhausted anyway. I would just be crawling along, waiting until after COA service and after day camp was done. I was like, I need a break. So I think we're in this morass naturally. We've done, 6 weeks of social isolation. We're also in May where everyone's tired anyway. It's like, okay, let's take a break for the summer. And yet, we here at Soul Matters feel this confidence and excitement and joy about what's going to happen in September. I think if we can give ourselves some recharge time and a break, it's going to be just like regular times that everyone comes back in September and they're like, yeah, I'll do it again. So there's that. So again, the metaphor is we've been standing in water up to our necks. We looked around and we expected a warm towel and it's all going to be over and September will bring regular, but it's not, right? So remember, we're trying to get up on that wave and do this essential ministry for our families. And Zoom, I mean, I was on Zoom for 8 hours yesterday, right? Yeah. And my eyeballs hurt. And my family wanted to play, my extended family wanted to play cards. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going play cards, online playing cards. So we need a break and we don't want to overuse Zoom. And yet, what are our other choices? Yes. So that's my little thing about home life and small groups. So,
Can I just add before we move on? Just
yes.
just to tease out what's making, yes, Katie's right that everybody we want to send the message of relaxing, but I want to lift up how my blood pressure is a little up. So I think rightly so. But we want to get because we think as we've listened to folks, there's 2 or 3 shifts that we feel we have to do with Soul Matters material around home life. And we'd love you to tell us, no, don't bother, because that would mean a lot less work. But we think you're gonna say, please do that. Okay. So the first shift we've been hearing from folks is, we like your Soulful Home packets. That's great. But we feel that it's not enough, and that it's like the shift is from Soulful Home alone to Soulful Home and what we call creating Sabbath space and the Chalice Home thing as well. Are folks familiar with this creating Sabbath space we sent out?
Yeah. I have to be honest with you. I did a whole bunch of promotion when it came out to do it, but the week that we launched it was that I did the online launch of it was spring break.
Well, this is exactly, Beth, why we're thinking what we're hearing from
Exactly.
folks. So it was great that you positioned Sabbath space for this unique time to deal with, like 2 months. But in some ways, it needs to be something that's a regular thing through all next year.
I agree.
So all of a sudden, our home life resources can't just be Soulful Home. They're Soulful Home and Chalice Home. Chalice Home becomes an essential, not an add-on, which would mean what we'd want to do is we'd want to basically be doing a Chalice Home monthly thing that's connected to the themes that allows the families to continue to build their Chalice Home throughout the whole year. So we think that's one implication of this. And then the other thing is Soulful Home I mean, you guys are so demanding and harsh. We love it. But so Soulful Home and Chalice Home aren't enough, Scott and Katie. They
Yep.
aren't. The doing of them is not enough. It's not compelling enough. Our parents won't. It won't stick for a year. You need to add on a processing those experience moment for parents. So what a program needs is not Soulful Home, Home Life, and Chalice Life, but we need an extra thing where you help us DREs host these parent meetings that give parents a chance to process what they did with Soulful Home and Chalice Home. That add-on, that added component of a parent component to those two things will make the whole system work and gel together. So let me be quiet. Those two things, Soulful Home and Chalice Home, need to be together all year. Chalice Home needs to be reanimated as a yearly thing. And then we need an extra piece that has some little guidance for us to do with parents to process both those experiences. So if in the chat you can say whether those are wrong-headed, right-headed. Katie, do we have just a minute for people if there's something that's more complex that they can't type?
So Scott, are you thinking of like a UU parenting adult religious ed thing to process?
Right, but what we're hearing is don't start giving me products that are all disconnected from each other, or I'll be exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
Tap into, so don't just tell me my job is to do parent groups. If there's a way I can route my parent group ministry that's connected to already existing programs, connected to Soulful Home and to Chalice, that will make less work for me and make the family's experience more integrate and it'll make Chalice Home and Soulful Home more compelling, and it'll also make my work less, and it'll make the experience of the families be more integrated. That's what's behind it, Beth, I think. Sarah or whoever.
Yeah, I think people are asking in the chat for just a brief distinction between Chalice and Soulful.
I'm putting in a link to our Chalice Home stuff.
And the 10-second version is Soulful Home is more comprehensive. It gives a number of activities to do around every aspect of family life, right? Dinner table, bedtime, adventures, talk, Soulful Home gives you an activity to weave the theme into every aspect of family life, mm-hmm. to weave faith formation into every aspect, one little thing to comprehensively. Chalice Home is a much more discrete program that is really about building a family altar to represent the sources of nourishment in our life or what's happening in our lives. So they're related but distinct in that way.
So the other reflection I will add on this is the exhaustion that we are facing. You're exhausted and our families are exhausted. So first of all, in normal times or olden times, whatever we're going to call it, that's natural now, and it's natural throughout the year, right? There's basketball practice, there's soccer, there's musical instruments, there's everything that children are going for. So let's not say it's all just because of COVID. That isn't anything new in a way. There's another layer of exhaustion because we're in a pandemic. My feeling as a DRE is that we serve the people who are interested in what we can do in the best way possible. If we pull back because 2 of our 15 families say they're exhausted, they will find their way back to meaning for them. Mm-hmm. And so I want to just encourage you to know that what our work is important, especially when we do these carrot things and draw them in. It's always been that way, hasn't it? It's always, the games night can fail because no one comes because they're so tired on a Friday night. So let's not forget what the usual landscape is for RE. One of the saddest part of my career was knowing the possibilities of what could happen and then not having the families participate or understand because they had basketball practice or Girl Scouts. So just remind us that it's always there. And the wave that we are riding for 21st century faith formation is this change in family life. If we can change family life to incorporate spiritual maturity and faith formation by having an altar, by doing a monthly thing, we don't need them to do it how about 5 times a day like the Muslim families do when they pray? We are going to change faith formation to the better. So there's my 50,000 foot look. So how about if I think I'm done with my outline. I think this is what Scott and I are thinking of.
We didn't do the classroom shifts yet.
Well, that was, okay. All right. The child-to-child classroom, AKA small group. You're right. So this is, for me, it's like, this is what is connected to the children's chapel. The small groups, 1-room schoolhouse, 2-room schoolhouse, whatever age permutation is for you. But we're not into, like when I was at one of the congregations, it was 6 different classes. We're not into that anymore. What we might have is, say, September's theme coming up is renewal. Starting again, we have a nice children's chapel on renewal with a really perfect story. And then the small group is the question for the children: when in your life have you experienced starting again? And that's the kid-to-kid interaction. And then, of course, there's going to be some tactile and some embodied learning. Let's say it's November's theme, and that this coming year is going to be healing. The first thing that comes to my mind is how much children love Band-Aid play. You know, how those literalists. So after the children's chapel on healing, and maybe it's the multi-gen worship service on healing, isn't it? You go into your small group and you do this response by making a Band-Aid puppet. And you talk about healing with that Band-Aid puppet, and you put a little face on the puppet. And you talk to each other. And it's going to be on a Zoom. But that's not school, is it? Talking to each other in a Band-Aid puppet. And they can get as silly as they want, and they will. But they're learning something, they're integrating something about the theme of healing. So that's how I visualize using the small group idea for children and calling them friendship circles or whatever by July comes out of our brains for what to name these things. That's the child-to-child interaction. All right. Yes,
Katie,
I'm done.
The only thing I would add to Katie's vision on that would be that, again, the sharp edge for soul matters that we need some feedback about, right? So the 2 big shifts there are that we're hearing is people saying with the small groups, the shift is from silo to integrated. What that shift means is no longer that the children's chapel and the small group experience are much more of an integrated whole than they have been in the past. And the implication of that, and this is where we really need feedback, is you're not moving from a children's chapel into this elaborate hour-long 5-component experience in the small groups. So in the old model, Katie, you notice Katie gave in our packets 5 things for your lay leaders to do in their small group thing after children's chapel.
Yeah.
if this shift is right, that we're moving from siloed to integration and shorter classroom, right? So it's a more elaborate children's chapel that sets up and leads into a smaller, more 30-minute experience with 1 or 2 focuses. That means our packets shift. And this is why, I mean, this is a big deal because we don't want you to be surprised. That means suddenly the part of Katie's packets that has the children's chapel is going to be not 2 pages of the 20, of the 40 that Katie does.
Hey,
It's not
50.
it's not 2 pages of the 50, it's 10. And the curriculum that used to be the classroom stuff is going to go from 40 pages down to 14. So that's why we need that feedback, right? Because why would Katie spend time doing 5 different exercises for an hour experience if all that is, if it's more integrated? But we don't want you to be surprised come September and be like, where the heck is all the support for my classroom? So that we need some feedback there. And then the other big shift is from DRE, remember that piece, DRE as coach and recruiter to teacher. Our assumption is that you all, whether it's 1, 2, or 3 circle, for those of you who are doing circles, to keep your relationship with the kids and the families up, not behind the scenes, you will probably move more into a teacher role. That if you do have these small groups, you're less likely to coach lay people to lead the 3 or 4 groups, but you at least take one of the 3. We're not sure what that will mean in terms of how we do the curriculum, but that is one of our assumptions that we think. So if that's accurate, tell us thumbs up. If it's not accurate, because see, we'd have to develop different support for you. You see what I mean? Like supporting material that supports you as the primary teacher versus material that helps you coach lay people. It's just written differently.
Yeah.
You know, it's designed differently.
And let me also say something that for me, when we shifted to Spirit Jam, which was me becoming much more of the teacher, using that early chapel experience and then moving into activities, that fed my heart for this work because I wasn't just a volunteer recruiter all the time. I could do the real beautiful spiritual connections, the beautiful connections that we could bring our faith, translate our faith for children. And so this is a little silver lining for DREs who, my guess is, so many of us love to do this work. Find these stories, find these heart-melting moments. And we get to do these with our children. So that's just one of the silver linings I found.
And I would just highlight, and again, whether it's useful or not, you know, the 4 structures that Katie named, right? Oh my God, my brain's going to chapel, right? Chapel, small groups, home life, and whatever this other category of outings is, right? Think about them as squares, right? In the old world, if the size of them, the second one, the classrooms, was the tallest and the biggest.
Yeah.
And the other 3, chapel, home life ministry, and whatever this outings extras was, were more small. They were the add-ons, they were the extras. And suddenly in this new model, it's inverse to where children's chapel suddenly becomes a bigger piece, home life a bigger piece, outings a bigger piece, and ironically, what we used to call the classroom small groups shrinks because it's sort of an add-on or an extension of children's chapel, or it's a setup to a tiny little activity that then you'll do in a more elaborate way with your family. You see what I mean? That's the big insight, I think, where we're headed, that those things, it flips of what's central and what's peripheral. Maybe. I mean,
Yeah.
Maybe that's what we're at.
Yeah, and I think that also answers the question where people are saying in the chat, you know, no more school, no more school. And definitely what we are learning about using this technology is that 30 minutes is the max, isn't it, for these children? We don't want them to be on an hour, not even 45 minutes. And so that's why you're going to be seeing this smaller, beautiful little tiny gems instead of this whole program for an hour. So I'm feeling like we've got some good things happening. I'm looking at the chat, which is why I stopped talking. There's some people needing to leave, but for us, hey, 45 minutes, an hour and 15. We're at an hour and 15. And if you have a final comment, please put it in the chat. Those are automatically recorded. But I'll invite Scott to say some closing words for us.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. There were some
Oh,
folks. There was two pretty prominent questions in the chat I noticed that we might
okay.
want to address before we leave, and I saw a couple hands.
Oh, cool. Okay, I wasn't paying attention.
Katie and I are willing to stay for another 15 minutes, but if folks have to go, the rest of this is loose ends, so to speak. But is that okay, Katie? I didn't mean to.
Yeah, no. I'm totally there. I didn't see hands.
There are two pressing things we'll get at the Zoom, but then I saw a couple hands. If those folks who raise their hands want to speak up. Beth, was that you?
Yes, it was.
The stage is yours.
My question is really simple. Can you define what you're talking about when you say Children's Chapel? Because we're one of the congregations that for 14 years has done first hour, second hour. So we have our kids in worship. So we used to have Children's Hour like 15 years ago, or Children's Chapel while the adults were in worship. You know, I took the kids and did Children's Hour Chapel. So can you define, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, we all define it differently, right? But I think when Katie and I talk about it, we see ourselves as needing to resource some resources for a component in an intergen service that you would be doing with a whole staff. That's not what we mean when we talk about children's chapel is family worship designed, yes, for kids, but I think we're assuming even when you designed a children's chapel, like what happened, some models that happen for classrooms, you often even invited families to come in. So you designed it not just that your audience was the kids, but for families. And so as we transition to online, children's chapels will be family worship, different from intergen whole worship. Then the one pressing question someone put says, they said it much more kindly than this. I don't even know who said it, but they were very kind and said, wait a minute, I thought you just said that interaction and friendships were really important at the beginning of this. And then at the end, you're telling us that the small groups go down and don't matter as much. There seems to be a conflict there. Well, first of all, I think we'd respond to that with, was it Walt Whitman? You know, we contain multitudes. So yes, the answer is yes, there's a conflict. There is a conflict there. We're not trying to sort, like, those are just two different things we're hearing. They might be competing. But I would also say, I don't even know if I believe this, but this is the voice in my head, that the language we've used for friendship development, we may be learning isn't totally accurate. That what we're doing when we have kids interact with kids, that the compelling thing is not kids come to our programs to find friends, even though we've used that language. It may be that the experience that they have with other kids their age is what's the compelling component. Even if we describe it as friend, like I'll just speak for my own son. When I was trying to get him to come to Sunday school, he would only say he had 2 friends in his group. He would not say all the kids in his class were friends with him, but he felt he was cathected with the kids in the class. So I don't know where to go with that, but that's how I would answer that. We may be off the mark if what we're trying to do is help the kids always build friendships versus have common experiences. Maybe that's the distinction. That if we think about this more as we're building a compelling common experience among kids, our programs will be more rightly designed and on the mark and compelling if we're seeing ourselves as designing moments where kids can become friends with each other. I don't know what that's worth, but that would be the other answer. And then the last loose end I would lift up is the one thread that Katie and I forgot was this may not be the way to end the call because it might up your blood pressure. But that in this new world of COVID, one of the shifts that DREs need to make is expand your role.
Big time.
which means start to move from being the midwife and director of an RE program to the congregation's family and kid pastor. Which means maybe your new role is that you're claiming the role of pastor to not just the kids and families, but parents. So the shift there is not just families and kids, but actually parents. And so what the work you're doing is also, this is why parent groups, running a monthly parental wellness program. I mean, we don't know what it means, but somehow that's the other shift that there seems, this new day seems to be saying to DREs that, and this isn't about keeping your employment, right? This isn't about proving your worth. This is about DREs being rightly positioned in this new environment, being the best ones in the system to move into parent pastor. We've got the parent, you not on your own, right? You develop a whole team, but it's the ministry of ministering to parents suddenly is a thing. And because it's most integrated and closely related with all the other family and kid activities, it's yours. So again, that may make your blood pressure go up, but I think it's showing that there's a compelling ministry calling in this new day for DREs. And it's not about saving your job. It's the position that you hold where the new day is calling to you to be able to fill that role better than others.
And I would add that in my experience, I have always filled that role, that people came to me when their child said they were going to commit suicide. People came to me when they found out that the grand uncle was abusing their daughter. First, my role was to bring in the minister right away, because ministers have trainings and all that stuff. But we are more accessible. Is that, it doesn't make sense sometimes, but we are there because we're there with their children. We're in the hall. We used to greet everyone. And those poignant moments that happened in my career make me grateful for what Scott just said, which is that role then becomes visible and transparent instead of this sort of subtext to being a volunteer coordinator.
Yeah, and I don't want to put down anyone's ministries, but if I were to bet right now, the phrase parent ministry, pre-COVID, that hasn't been a phrase that's used. We talk about family ministry, kids ministry, but our language has not been occupied. The phrase parent, if you did one of those word board or those word cloud things, pre-COVID, parent ministry would be a tiny little phrase. If I were a betting man, I would say 6 months from now, word cloud, parent ministry gets big. And the most thriving programs will be ones where the DRE has said, I'm not trying to be the pastor to every parent. I'm not trying to be everything, but whose job is it to make sure there is a parent ministry, that there's a structure and a system for parent? That's you're the director, the builder of that, would be one of my guesses.
Yep. I can see that, what's going to be in that packet, some parent stuff.
That's all I got, Katie. Do you want to offer close or any? I mean, I know everybody has to get. Do you want to offer up a blessing, or does anybody want to offer any final words?
Over and over, I end these programs just saying, be safe and be well. Find the ways that recharge you in your spirit. And may you be blessed for the work you have done, standing up to your neck in these huge changing times, and turning around and not finding that warm towel, but finding the energy to ride that wave. Once again, blessed be. Amen, everybody. It was great to have you.
So may it be.
Oh, so may it be. That's great. Thank you all. Really grateful.
You'll note that I'm staying on.
Okay.
Hi, Katie.
Hi
Do you
there.
remember me?
Yes.
That's so funny. Katie remembers me when I was young and skinny.
That's all right.
Here, let's stop recording because
Yeah.
gonna-
Oh, thank you.
and skinny. I don't because I think we all have those.